I will call this meeting of the Urbana Public Television Commission to order on Friday, December 9th, 2022 at 12:02 p.m. Would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Schultz?
Here.
Commissioner Folk?
Here.
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Gutzmer?
Here.
And Commissioner Polk is not here. Am I saying it right, Gutzmer, or what's your preferred pronunciation?
You were actually closer than anybody else ever gets, so that's great.
Okay. And I'm going to shut the door because we have some construction kind of stuff going on out there.
We have two sets of minutes to approve. Has anyone read them, or do you want to read them now or have comments on them? Hearing no comments, do I have a motion to approve them?
Move approval of the minutes.
All right. Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Did we have any correspondence this quarter?
There is no correspondence.
All right. Moving on to the staff report.
All right. I have one item on the staff report, and then I'm just going to give you a couple other updates after that. So I included in the packet a copy of the memo that was sent to council, and I met with council on Monday, the 5th of December, to discuss UPTV status. So I'll give you the same update and overview and answer questions. The first is, as we talked about at the September meeting, we're doing some substantial equipment updates at UPTV. The first phase of that work was at the end of September, and it was mostly behind the scenes video work. So we replaced some equipment, specifically our TriCaster, and we also replaced the piece of our rack that does streaming. So that I'll talk more about in a moment. They were here for 2 days. We also did some other upgrades to the wiring, which will be part of phase 2. And as importantly, they also did mapping of what's plugged in on our rack and just kind of gave us a good diagram of what's there. So that was very useful information. The live streaming. So let's talk about that. We turned on the live streaming for the first time on October 24th. As always, when we're going live with new technology, it was a bit of a rocky beginning. What happened was before the meeting, we had issues with people calling in, and then we also had issues with the live stream, so there was a lot of kerfuffle, I think is the technical term, right? And we fell back on the old method of live streaming, and that prompted some complaints because we had sent out notification and our mistake, posted something to social media saying, hey, we have a new live stream. So anyway, the bottom line on that was that the first week was a bit of a rocky road. The problem ultimately fell into that we are capped on the new live streaming service at 12 hours a day. And I'm in discussions with the company. So a little bit of background here as well. We used in the past product called Livestream. So that was actually the name of the company. And they were bought by a different company that's called Vimeo. And so you might have seen Vimeo videos. So what happened was I contacted Vimeo in October and said, hey, we have this new equipment in place. We want to use it for streaming. The big difference in streaming, by the way, is we're now streaming in high definition as opposed to the old method, which was very standard definition. So they said, okay, great. And he told me when I talked to the guy, he said, we're phasing out the product that they bought. They're phasing out, as is pretty typical in these kind of things. And he said, so instead we're using our main core service for live streaming. And so I said, okay, great. That's fine. We'll get ahead of the curve on this one. Sure, upgrade us. So we upgraded, and that's when we learned about the 12-hour limit, which didn't exist in the past. I then have had some discussions, but it's been pretty unsatisfying because they are not really responsive. Basically, if we want to go to 24-hour live streaming, it increases our yearly cost from $660 to $10,000. And I've not yet gotten somebody to meet with me to explain what the difference is. They kept postponing the meeting, and then I was told that now I have a different account rep, and I'm waiting for somebody to contact me. So, as it is right now, we're streaming 12 hours a day, and we're streaming from noon to midnight because our meetings happen from in that range. So that seemed like the better methodology. If you go to the UPTV Vimeo site, the past streams are there. So it's, a little bit like YouTube in that way that you can kind of watch the old ones or you can watch the current live one. One of the questions I got from council was if we've considered other alternatives, since obviously we're not really getting great response from Vimeo, and the answer is we're looking into it. My preference, because we've kind of already got this one set up, would be to ride this out and figure out what's going on, but there are alternative streaming services. So that would be something we can look into. We did have a second issue, which is what prompted me to go to council and talk about it. It was November 14th. This one was different. Instead of being capped at 12 hours or something like that, we were in the middle of a meeting and the stream just died. And at the time, we didn't really have an ability to debug it without being disruptive to the meeting. So that was a night where council meeting started at 6 because there was township. And so it crapped out around 6:40. And then when people turned on for the city meeting at 7, there was nothing. So we got some complaints about that as well. So the next day we got in, we met with our vendor. We've hired a vendor to help us with all this work. So we met with the vendor, we looked at logs. The best we could see is that the signal coming out of the TriCaster and going into the streaming device, I'm probably mangling the details, it kind of fell off, and then the streaming one just stopped. So, basically, we did not see a smoking gun. We don't know exactly why it stopped sending. They did some adjustments. We reduced the stream rate, for example. We've been monitoring it. It has fallen off other times now. Not too many, but, especially in the first couple of days while we were doing testing and stuff like that, it did fall off again. So I wouldn't say it's fixed, but it's something that we're monitoring. And we also set it up so that when it happens again, we have a way to restart it without disrupting the meeting. So, so we kind of have methods that are better than what we had at first. So it's a process, and we're still working on that. The last part of the work is scheduled now for the end of December. I didn't have that locked down when this memo was written, but the week between Christmas and New Year's, they're going to be back. We have all the audio equipment back here. So what's going to be the big change with the second set of work is the audio. Currently, these microphones that we're using are carrying the signal back in an analog format. That's going to change to digital. And we're, instead of having an analog rack back there with big old plugs that have problems, it'll be digital with, Cat5 cable, and we'll also have a lot more ability to control things. So that's going to be nice as well. There is one last piece of equipment that's still back ordered, which is a touchscreen control, but we believe that we will have a web version that we can use in the interim until the touchscreen's in place. So, pleased with all the way that this is rolling. Everything takes longer than you'd expect, but I do expect that hopefully when January comes around, we'll be in better situation with the audio. We have had, just so you know, we've had some ongoing issues with the audio during our meetings due to the way that we're using this analog rack, particularly when people are on the phone calling into a meeting. That's where the quality has really been poor, because we're taking, if you saw it back there, you would laugh. I mean, we're taking an adapter, it's going through another adapter, and it's going then over to an adapter into a 3.5 millimeter plug into a laptop. And so there's lots of points of failure there. So we hope that when we move to the full digital environment, it'll be much better. So that's my update on the issues that we've been having and the equipment upgrades. Any questions on that? Okay. The other part of the staff report, just to give you two other pieces of information. We have when we had our last meeting in September, we had 3 camera operators. And we decided that we really needed to have at least one more. So we posted a position, we took resumes, we met with candidates, and we wound up having 2 candidates that we liked. So we hired 2 people. So we went from 3 to 5 camera operators. Gives ourselves a little bit more bandwidth in terms of juggling people if we have to. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 is we've also undertaken some of the things that we've talked about in the past about our library of content. So one of the ways that we wanted to start using our camera operators was to start ripping from our old DVDs of all this stuff. And in terms of equipment purchases, we bought, and we haven't fully set it up yet because we've been playing with it downstairs. We bought a machine that rips DVDs and you can stack them in there. That's the key feature. And then it just kind of goes through them. We're still trying to work to make that successful. So, that's going to, but the flip side of that is all it does is rip the DVDs and sort of give them cryptic file names for whatever was on the DVD. So we also had a meeting recently with Donica Swan from the library to talk about strategies for organizing our files. Because, needless to say, if we went from 1,000 DVDs to 10,000 cryptically named files, we haven't really made that much progress. So we're going to try to come up with an organization system, but the camera operators who we've hired, we're offering them additional hours of work to come and do the ripping. And that's going to be a way that we wanted to be able to give our camera operators a more regular schedule with more hours of work. And, this way we can sort of make sure that the work is moving forward. So those were the updates from the staff report.
That's great. I was going to ask about the media project. That's exciting. We don't have anyone in the audience, so there's no audience participation. And the next item is unfinished business, which is a discussion of UPTV's focus going forward. The first item of which is a discussion of UPTV's focus moving forward. Do you want to update us on bring us back to where we were?
It's easier to do that than to tell you what's changed. So where we were last time in talking about this topic was UPTV has 3 parts of its mission, the PEG, PEG acronym, so public access, education, and government. And during the pandemic, particularly, we lost focus on public access and education due to, not being in the schools and the public not being allowed in the building. And our focus really was on the government side. Since we've been rolling forward out of the pandemic, we want to refocus our energies back on the other aspects of UPTV. Because, at the end of the day, we want UPTV to be more than the online bulletin board interspersed by government meetings. And, so that has been a challenge. And, actually, this is a good point in time. I want to note the passing of David Monk, who had a show on UPTV for a very long time called The Prairie Monk. And it his passing was expected. He's been in hospice care for a while. But, he was recording on Zoom through the pandemic and even, until recently. So there have been content producers still doing UPTV programs during the pandemic, but not very many. And so, we need to move back towards bringing the audience, bringing our community in and gathering content. And something that we talked about a lot at the last few meetings was soliciting content that people are making already, as opposed to needing to come in and borrow our cameras, which is still one of the things that UPTV is here for, that's the public access and the education. We want people to come and engage with us, but even if they're making content outside of us, we're still happy to show it once we come up with a proper process for submitting that and vetting it and reviewing it and programming it. Programming it as in putting it on the other air in a schedule. That part has not really moved forward, just mostly due to my inability to have time to spend on it. We also have not really moved forward on the education aspect in terms of outreach with the schools. Again, just I think the school district has had a lot going on this fall, and we do want to move forward with those things and sort of circle back. It's a long haul, and so those efforts are ongoing, but not a lot of real progress to report on them.
Do any other commissioners have thoughts they'd like to share on that?
John, you had mentioned that maybe there was a teacher at the middle school.
I did talk to the teacher at the middle school. Again, it's been a minute since we've been doing that, and the last month I've not had time to follow up with him.
Right.
But he did say he was interested, and he had not started kind of the video production stuff this semester yet, which the semester is almost at a close. But I will reach back out to him to see what he's doing for next semester. The one other thing that just kind of occurred to me right now, I know we talked a lot last time about everybody has basically a television studio on their phone that makes it very easy to like create content on their own without like a lot of extra cameras and tripods. One of the things that's been the most valuable for the school district is when we do have kind of bigger productions, like we had a Hispanic Heritage celebration at the high school. It was nice to be able to get a couple cameras. We tied that in on our side with like a little mini kind of switcher production box that let you bring in outside audio from your soundboard that's already there, and then let you kind of do switching between two cameras. The one we have is a ATEM Mini Pro, but having like just kind of a kit where you could have two cameras, two tripods, and then a switcher, that also you can plug into the network, and then you hit one stream button and you can set it up to stream automatically to a source. So it could be the UPTV YouTube. So you could set it up. All you'd have to do is schedule their event on the UPTV side, give them the box, and they just hit the button and they're streaming to the UPTV. I don't know if that would be something that would be valuable to have.
We can certainly explore it. Yeah, it's great.
What does UPTV have in regard to mixing and video editing resources?
So we have a PC back here that has Sony. It used to be called Vega. I don't remember what the current name is, but we have some relatively robust software that's installed on a relatively good PC now that people can use to edit content. It is it's the hard part, right? It's easy to shoot video. The editing is the time-consuming and more difficult phase of it. So it is something that we have, take time and we can show people how to do. There's some confusion about that sometimes, that people think that they shoot video and then they just give us the raw footage and UPTV will edit it. That's not the way it works. We provide the resources, but not the bodies. So, but those resources are available here, and but at the same time, like we've kind of talked about, a lot of people would have programs on their Mac or on their Windows that can do a lot of the same things. So, our solution is pretty robust, but also a little complex. I can tell you from personal experience. Some other solutions that come just on your basic computer that you might buy might be all people need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I spoke with someone at the library, and they thought that staff would be willing to share a lot of the recordings from programming that we've done during the pandemic. What are the needs for getting the footage ready and put together? Like, is there a standard set of requirements that something needs to be ready to air? like, is there a vetting process or?
Well, there's the two good questions. Let me address the first one. I'm not sure off the top of my head what the format would be. For example, what size and file types. We can handle most everything, I believe, but I'm sure there could be some guidance we can provide about what would be best. In terms of the content and vetting the content, that is one of the concerns I have, primarily because we are a TV station and we have to adhere to FCC rules. So we would need to have some confidence that the content doesn't have inappropriate or intellectual property. So there, that could be another thing we'd want to watch out for. So we would need to, we wouldn't just, like, I'd be a little queasy about the idea of just sort of, hey, send us a file, we'll put it on the air. We would want to do that once we have somebody who's a member, and again, for people's content to be shown, they need to join. It's free, but they can join UPTV as a producer, a member, and then they would be provided with the guidance. And so then we would have some leverage to say, look, you understand the guidance. You're confirming to us that your content doesn't have curse words. Because if it does, then we have to show it after a certain time of night. So that would just be at least the basic level that we'd have to do.
Are you thinking that individual people at the library would be doing that, or would that be the library putting together that list of programs that would be sent over?
Yeah, it would be like created by library staff and librarians.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of, there's a lot of story times recorded already. And like the speakers that I have for the archives, all of those are recorded. But that might run into intellectual property issues too. So I guess I would have to check with.
Yeah, those are interesting cases. I mean, obviously, we would feel a lot more confident because if the library staff was able to, hey, look, yes, we recorded this, we know what's on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one story time book that I can think of that would present a problem for you. Curse
Go to
words.
sleep?
Yes.
Yeah. Being a parent myself. But it's an interesting question, and we may have to just have a conversation about it. Like, let's say somebody's reading a book, and that's the story time. I honestly don't have a good answer as to whether that is appropriate use of intellectual property or not. Mm-hmm. Right. So we would just need to have some conversations around it. But otherwise, that would be wonderful. And especially speakers who are, not necessarily reading from their book, but talking about their content. It's a great win-win because it's interesting information, and it also promotes, whatever it is that they're in town to promote. So that would be fabulous.
Does Urbana School District have its own YouTube channel?
We have been using the UPTV YouTube channel for almost all of our things that we do, all the board meetings for sure, and then most of the school events. There have been a few times where we have not been able to get a staff member to those events, so one of the high school staff members has had to use a personal, but for most of our things, we use the UPTV channel.
Okay. I would say keep working really strongly in the schools. A school district that I am aware of, they have a group of students go around interviewing fellow students or faculty about events of the week. Sometimes it's the football team going into the playoffs this week, and the Madrigal performance, and the popular fifth grade assembly or something like that. That's good stuff that could be shared, and I'm sure there are students at the high school on the AV club or something that would just love to get behind a microphone and see their face go out. So I think that's a very fertile ground to till.
I agree. And I think, those are the places that we just need to, it's, things got pushed back by 3 or 4 years, so we just need to go back, sort of restart some of the programs that we did in the past. Again, I want to give a lot of credit to Jason Liggett for building up those relationships and spending his own efforts to really, get students engaged. Staffing constraints have limited our ability to redo those things. So hopefully in the future we can, try to return to that kind of effort.
So you're dedicating a little bit of staff time to the DVD project. I wonder if when that project wraps up, maybe that staff time could be part of the coordination of that stuff. I don't know if it's
To me, it's a different role because the camera operators are, they're, for most of them, it's a couple-hour a week job. And so, they come in and they're doing something. It's pretty straightforward. The ongoing interaction with the school district, actually, a lot of our camera operators have day jobs. So they're coming in outside of a sort of regular work schedule to work meetings in the evenings or whatever. The outreach requires somebody who, to me, in my mind, is more of a, sort of Monday to Friday daytime employee, because you're interacting with people, you need to go back and forth by email and things like that. So it might wind up being something else that we have to either assign to existing staff or create a position for. And I will note that in the past, there have been positions at UPTV. For example, there was one called outreach coordinator. And so, in some cases, it might just really be returning back to some of the efforts that were done in the past that built up the program that we used to have. So then the other part of the unfinished business, just to finish this up, the UPTV content archives, I kind of talked about that under the staff report. But, we're slowly, imagine the giant, wheels are starting to slowly grind forward with this kind of a process. Building momentum will be key. I think with the machine that we got, if it works out the way it's advertised, and if we can come up with some structure to organize things, once we get to the point where people are going 3, or 6, or even, 9 or 12 hours a week, we're making progress through the DVDs. I'm hopeful that we'll start to get progress. It was kind of exciting to see the first one, that we pulled out. We just randomly kind of pulled one out from the shelf, and it was like a 2006 episode of Champaign Agriculture News or something. And, to me, it reiterated kind of the goal here that this is locally produced content that, someday, one day somebody's going to look back and say, wow, look at all the cool stuff that was going on at that time. So that was rewarding. And also, by the way, one of the discs wasn't playable until we had to do some polishing on it. So that, again, sort of reiterates the importance of this as well. Some of these DVDs are starting to go. Mm-hmm. So hence the urgency.
Well, I'm really, as I said, I'm really happy to see that's moving forward. That's cool. All right, any other comments on the ongoing discussion there? Is there a feeling that we need to come up with more of a plan, or just kind of let things ride for now?
I'm always happy for any help people are willing to provide. So if commissioners want to reach out to me individually outside the meeting and talk about, make suggestions and find ways to help, please contact me. Otherwise, just kind of let it ride. And it is on my to-do list. Problem is, so many other things are as well.
Yeah.
Have you reached out to the Champaign County Historical Museum?
I have not. And that was a suggestion you've made in the past that made it to my to-do list.
Okay.
But only that far.
All right.
Yeah,
Sorry to pester you.
No. I mean, part of this was, and this is getting a little bit in the weeds on the content archives, but just, part of the discussion was kind of how do we organize this? So that was some of the conversation we have with the library folks. The other aspect of is where to store it, And for that one, it was kind of easier because I just talked to some of the members of my team in IT and basically challenged them to come up with a big old storage, server that we can store all this stuff on. Even if we ultimately do hand it over to the archives or somebody else, there'd be a period of time where we need to have it here locally where we can gather it. And then we can hand it over as a well-organized piece of information later. So we're kind of working toward, in the interim, we're storing it and we are backing stuff up. In the interim, we're storing it on some external hard drives just because that's relatively easy and cheap. But we do want to come up with a better kind of consolidated approach.
Have you calculated how many gigabytes or terabytes that you think it'll be?
No. Part of it, like the first DVD that we pulled to test, it was like I mentioned, it was Agriculture Today, and it had 2 episodes on it. So I can't, and it was kind of like set as like a sort of a DVD with a menu, so you can watch episode 1 or episode 2. It'll be interesting as we move forward to see how many of them are set up like that, or how many of them are set up as just, a single episode, et cetera. So I really, it'll take us some time to extrapolate storage.
Did you say you thought there were 7,000? Is that a number I remember?
No. I would throw 1,000 as a sort of rough number. It's just there's a wall of DVDs back there.
Okay.
I think with some quick math, the upper limit on 1,000 DVDs is 4 terabytes,
Yeah,
which
I
is
was
a
getting the
very,
same
very
number.
reasonable number.
Yeah, you can buy that off Amazon for $200 these
Yeah.
days, right? It's ridiculous how storage has become a non-issue. My bigger concern was backing it up, because it's easy to write it to a hard drive, but what if that hard drive walks away or gets coffee spilled on it, et cetera?
You can buy a second hard drive for another $200.
You can, that's right. But the content will be lost.
Well, you raid them. But we can talk about that after the
Yeah.
meeting. Next order of business is approving the 2023 meeting schedule. Current expected schedule is March 10th, 2023 at noon, which is, I'm assuming these are Fridays.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did not say that. All Fridays at noon,
Yeah.
correct.
June 9th, 2023, which is a Friday at noon. September 8th, 2023, which again I'm assuming is a Friday at noon. And December 8th, 2023, which should be a Friday, given that today is the 9th, also at noon. Do I hear a motion to approve or discussion on, actually, I guess we have to have a motion before we can discuss.
Move approval of the proposed 2023 meeting schedule.
Is there discussion or a second?
I second.
All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
The 2023 schedule is approved unanimously. And moving on to commissioners' comments. Does anyone have anything to share that they haven't already?
Just looping back to the History Museum, I'm on their board also, so if you ever need someone when the time comes.
Great. Good to know.
The UPTV and the school district have been working for quite some time on upgrading our equipment, and I think this past Tuesday we finally had a successful point-to-point streaming through the existing UPTV services. So I thank Sanford and everybody who worked on that for all the help getting that set up.
So just to clarify, though, Tuesday night's video was not a success.
was it not?
No. It came through, but it was kind of, it wasn't clean. So there's some further follow-up that Carlos was doing.
Well,
so.
we'll talk. But it came
Yeah,
through with the audio and the video.
I'm not sure if it had the audio either. So
Okay.
I'm not ready to declare success on that one.
Okay.
It has been an ongoing effort, and I want to thank UPTV staff, including Ibrahim and Anna and Carlos from IT, have all put a lot of effort into trying to get this straightened out, and it's been a good learning experience.
Yep. Well, I guess the ticket lives on then.
It is our oldest work ticket, too, yeah.
All right. I don't have anything specific to add other than that things are different in this commission than they have been over the years. It's a little bit of a different feel, but I actually am kind of enthusiastic about the moving forward, especially with the idea of bringing the archive out into the public. I think it actually makes this station much more relevant going forward as well. So looking forward to that. All right. There being no other business, this meeting is now adjourned.